Thank you for joining our ETRAGE webinar. Today, I am joined by Shei, a ETRAGE Senior Technical Specialist, who will be demonstrating some Creo tips and tricks, and then we will provide some time so that the audience can ask your questions around Creo. Should time not allow us to get to every question, we will follow up. So please, for the benefit of all Creo users, ask whatever questions you have. So at this point, I'll let you know that everyone is muted. When you do have a question, you can use the Q&A icon for those questions. And additionally, a recording of today's webinar will be available. Everyone who has registered for this webinar will receive a link via email. I'm Sinead from ETRAGE, and I have been within the PTC and manufacturing space for over 13 years. Prior to that, for over 20 years, I worked in education, making sure that learners have the opportunity to learn and that instructors understand how learning happens. As I said today, Shei is with me. He has also been in the PTC and manufacturing space for over 13 years. Knowing him, I would say his true passion within the world of computer-aided design is in simulation, though his expertise crosses many topics within PTC and ETRAGE products. Today, I'll do a brief introduction of ETRAGE, and then I'll immediately hand things over to Shei. Once he covers his prepared topics within Creo, we will open the floor for your questions. So, who is ETRAGE? ETRAGE started as a software development company over 20 years ago, and then became a PTC technology and service partner. Since then, we have expanded our offerings to support product lifecycle management, PLM, adoption, to extend beyond engineering and across the entire manufacturing enterprise. We understand that PLM adoption isn't a one-time event, but it is an ongoing strategic process that is evolving as your business evolves. Our support of PLM adoption includes supporting the systems, the processes, and the people. So with that, ETRAGE does offer private and public training of Creo and Windchill. If you or your team is looking to standardize how each engineer or designer uses CAD or PLM, or if you have a more niche topic that needs a deeper exploration, let me know. We do provide tailored training, mentoring, and we also have standard classes. If you want, you can look at our public schedule as well as our standard class offerings that are listed on etrage.com. For today, Shei will cover 3 topics. He will share an often underutilized module within Creo called DEX. He will revisit the useful tool of creating Mapkeys, and then look at replace components. So, Shei, I'll hand things over to you.
All right, wonderful. Thanks, Sinead. So, Shei Shimbora here, and let me go ahead and share my screen. So, my screen should be shared now. So we'll start out, as Sinead mentioned, all topics will be around, design exploration extension, and then replace components, and then also Mapkeys. Right? So start off with design exploration, and it's a functionality that is relatively new-ish to PTC world. I think they added it somewhere around the Creo 3, Creo 4 timeframe, but it's something now that at least and there's I think initially when it was introduced, there was kind of like a freebie version and then an advanced version and different sets of functionality in each one. But now, for the most part, what I see, it looks like, it's included in many, essentials, licenses. Meaning, if you have a recent license package, from PTC, it's probably in there already, right? And it's a powerful functionality that allows you to safely, try and explore design changes, with minimal risk, right? And so I'll show some examples of that, right? So I'll take, for example, in this case here, this drill assembly here, right? So it's a gas-powered, drill, and so, from product engineering, we got the brief that we want to, come out with a version 2 of this product, right, where the gas tank is bigger, right, and so you can maybe users need more gas, all right, to finish a particular task, and so I'll go ahead and in this case here and open this gas tank, and you can make some changes to this, right? Now, it's possible for me to change this gas tank within the context of the main assembly, right? With everything still in session in this main file. But then the risk I run is, anything downstream that's a child to this object here, gets affected by any design changes I make to this, right? And so oftentimes what people may do then is, okay, maybe you save a copy of your existing model, so that way as you're working on that, then maybe, if there are any changes that happen that may be disruptive, then you could, your main model is not affected, right? And all that save a copy, it can be time consuming. It can create, random copies everywhere in your computer. And so what we have now is design exploration extension. You access it from the file manage session menu, the design exploration, right? And you can hit the start button. Right? You can always give it a name, right, and a description of what that session is about, right? So you can give some meaningful comments. In this case here, I'll just keep the default as is, and I'll go right in. Right now, first thing you'll notice in this case is it adds a checkpoint tree right to the right of your model tree right here, and then you have the ability to add checkpoints, right? And so anytime you make a design change or a tweak, you can add that as a checkpoint, right? And so, say for example, we want to delineate. Okay, well, we want to explore some alternatives to increase the size of this fuel tank. And so, let's go ahead and make a couple different variants here, and then we could prepare this for design review, right? And so I can go in and say, for this dimension here, let's say one variant where that is 80, okay? And I'll add a checkpoint, call that the medium size fuel tank, okay? I can add any keywords as well to this checkpoint, right? And these keywords over here essentially mean that you can then, say for example, you have your design exploration tree with many different checkpoints. You can search within that tree for certain keywords, and so you can find the exact checkpoint you're looking for and then activate that. Right? So that's the medium size over here. I can also then say, okay, well, let's make a large size, right? So do that. Okay. Oh, and now, by the way, in this case, it says over here the regen failed, right? Creo couldn't regenerate a particular feature. Now, if this happens, I don't have to fret about, oh my goodness, what's I wondering how to fix the model, or the risk that I may have corrupted the model in this case, right? If I want to back out of this completely, right, it's as simple as hitting one button, the X right over here, right? It'll typically ask you, do you want to save the design exploration session? And usually this is checked. If I uncheck that, say okay, close that. I can close out everything in Creo, right? I can go back and open that fuel tank. I think this time I'll just go for the fuel tank directly, not the entire assembly. And no changes committed. Right? There's no failure to the model. Right? The fuel tank is exactly as it was before I went into the DEX session. So again, just to show that whenever you get into that session, there's zero risk to your existing Creo model. Right? Now, I'll go back into that again. I'll recreate the change and I'll show some more points. Okay. All right, so now let me quickly recreate the medium size. Okay. Oh, yes. And let's see. Yeah. So that medium one here, there is a yep, a failure in this case of that round. So that's 80. So now in this particular example here for this failure, I know that I think that radius is just a little too big. So if I reduce that a little bit here, that can regenerate successfully. So I can add that as a checkpoint and say that is so. And then I can also then create, make the large size. So, okay. And right. Now I can flip back and forth between any of these, right? I can double click to the medium and the model immediately switches to that, right? I can double click back and forth. You can also even branch off from checkpoints as well, right? So say for example, I wanted to, again, in a design review, wanted to say, hey, let's, pick the medium and let's apply three different appearances. So we want to see how this looks like with, red, yellow, and green as an example, right? So I can branch off, create those additional 3 as checkpoints underneath the medium variant and the large variant. So that way, then I can have this, design review with product and say, okay, well, let's take a look at the alternatives and decide which one best fits, our design aesthetic and what we want to go for and what we want to approve finally, right? Once you do end up with, a particular model that you want to proceed forward with, it's as simple as hitting this check mark over here. Only when you hit that check mark do the changes that you have on that checkpoint you selected then apply to your main Creo, file, your PRT or ASM file. Right? So another thing to note, by the way, I'll also point out is, and aside from these checkpoints over here, you'll notice there's this pre-modified over here. Right? So Creo is smart enough to know as soon as I entered DEX, right, it saved a checkpoint for me already, right, of the model as it was before I made any changes whatsoever. So again, if I need to get back to that, I can always, that's already a system, defined or created, checkpoint already. Now, the way design exploration is managed, it's purely a Creo parametric function, right? So what I mean by that is, it's something that if you have Windchill, you can use, right? You can work with, right? But even if you don't have a PLM system, if you don't have Windchill, you can still use DEX because it's not dependent on the PLM, right? Everything DEX does is purely within the Creo session itself. So again, you can think of, say another example where you're responding to like an ECO or a customer, change request where, there's, a released or near release design, right? The customer comes back and says, hey, can you, move a mountain boss, let's reduce the envelope, let's change, certain interface geometry, right? Before DEX, you have to, make a change directly and hope it works, you keep your fingers crossed, right? Or you save as a copy and you work on that while keeping your original clean, right? But DEX lets you start up a completely new sandbox, test out the design change, evaluate any downstream impact, right? And then you can choose whether to commit or throw it away, right? All without ever touching the actual model files. Another example here that I'll point out, or use case with DEX would be with design exploration, particularly in the context of update control with top-down design. So I'll pull out, have another Creo session open here with a different model that I'll use to explore that. And on this particular model, there's a skeleton part that's created, right? A skeleton. And I'll expand these two nodes just to show you here. So this skeleton extrude, right, is a feature that defines the size of this inner bore over here, and that is then passed to this copy geometry feature. Right? So copy geometry copies that from skeleton extrude, and then the body extrude is just extruded off based off of that. Right? And so if I go into copy geometry here, I can edit definition here, and you'll notice this is it's copying the surface of that skeleton extrude, right, from the skeleton model. Now, the default option when you're creating, copy geometries with the top-down design is typically the automatic update, but you can specify you want a manual update, right? And or selecting the option to provide notifications. When you do that, that just tells Creo, hey, don't automatically update the model. Give me the option to choose. Now, if I go into the skeleton, and we'll make a change to this and say, instead of 50, let's call that, say that was going to be 55, right? Make that change there. Regenerate the model, Control G, right? You'll notice now, instead of automatically updating the entire model like normally you would see, right? In this case, there's a notification that says, hey, something is out of date. There's a flag in my notification center as well. If I click on that, pulls out the notification center that shows me, hey, in which part is affected, right? Body.prt, and what feature within that part is affected that's out of date. Right? Now, if I want to explore, now I can go to that feature, all right, right click, and in the update control menu over here, right, there's a few options now that design exploration then shows you here. One is you can pick over here to show differences, right? So this is you then asking Creo, hey, show me any differences between the what it was before the change versus what the proposed change is, right? The outdated geometry is shown in light gray. What's changed is shown in orange, so you can clearly see that. If it's not clear enough, because again, the block itself is kind of grayish, you can even isolate down to just exactly what changed. So now it's clear. I can see, okay, well, what geometry changed, and it looks like in this case, if you're happy with the change and you feel like it's gonna work well, right? You can go ahead and accept that, or you can even, and to accept that, you can hit the update over here, or you can even go into the update session. And again, explore update will take you into a design exploration extension, or session, I should say, right? And in this case, it says, it's already open. I already have a session open, right? But in this case, if I, didn't have that other session open there, I would be able to go into DEX, and let's actually do this way here. Let me, in this other model here, I'll commit to one of these checkpoints just so that I can do that. Once I commit over here, it asks, do you want to save the session? I'll say no. I'll just want that to be a temporary session. So I've committed to this one here. It's done. Now I'll go back to my other model here, and now a DEX should be available for me. So I should be able to come in here now, right click, update control. I can directly go into explore update from here, right? Picks up the DEX model or session, and say okay, and I can go in here. Now over here, Creo automatically says, okay, it creates a few automatic checkpoints, pre-modified before I entered, as the model was open, I should say. Right? Entry checkpoint. This is the body set to, I think it was 50, right? Yeah, was the bore over here of the body from the skeleton, right? And now the automatic checkpoint 2 is the change from the skeleton model to 55, right? That's the checkpoint 2 over here. And so now I can toggle between these over here and see, okay, well, what's the difference, right? If there are any failures or any issues with the model, I can clearly see that with this checkpoint 2. If everything is good as is, and I like this and I want us to proceed forward, I can go ahead and hit accept, right? And so again, in the concept of top-down design, right, where you have a skeleton that's driving geometry across multiple parts, right? you can explore very safely the, what if I move this interface data, right? Or what if I change this by a certain size, right? And any cascading failures down the tree, you can clearly see all of that, right? And DEX gives you a very safe sandbox to, make skeleton changes and see what breaks before committing to a particular change. So that's everything there. I'll mention about design exploration. And so next one we'll jump into here is going to be replace. Right? And so for this particular model, I'll get back to the story of the drill, and I will say let's close this out because I actually do have an updated fuel tank over here. I think it is this updated fuel tank model. I already have that built. Right? So I will open my main assembly. Right? Now, typically, in my PLM system, I will, or without it, typically I would save this model out, right? Or revise it, right? So if I'm, going to continue the same model but make a revision of that, or make it save out as, a different product SKU, right? So say for example, we call this now the small tank size for the gas drill, right? And or gas powered drill, and I want to have like a medium or large size tank, right? Normally I'll save out the main assembly, right? And whatever components don't change, right? I'll keep those as is, right? So that way purchasing, and the rest of the organization knows that all of those, we're just reusing those objects, right? But whatever changes is that's the only thing I'm going to go change, right? Now in this case, I already have the new fuel tank modeled. I just need to replace that, right? Now there's a few options. One is I could delete this from here and then go reassemble the new fuel tank. But the risk I run is any parent-child relationships and references that have already been created, right, could break, and I have to go reattach those again, right? Or there is the option of if you right-click, being able to do a replace geometry or component. And when you replace component, Creo will typically pull out this dialog box over here. Number one, if you ever see this option to replace, remember these components and have that box checked, you almost always want to remove that checkbox, right? Especially in a context where you have PLM like Windchill, you always want to remove that checkbox. But if not, even without PLM, just remove that checkbox, right? Because somehow what that will do is preserve a dependency to the outgoing file, even though it's no longer not in the model, right? Now in this case over here, I'll go ahead and say I want to replace with an unrelated component, and I'll go ahead and pick the new model. Okay, now edit reference table is what I'll select, where Creo will now create an interchange assembly on the fly, right? It has the outgoing model for me, and then the new model over here, right? And now it shows over here in the reference pairing table all the references that were selected or that were used to create the original model, right? And now I get to select what those new references are going to be on this new model here. Right? So now it shows over here, okay, for this reference, it's that surface. So what's it going to be on this one over here, right? And I get to define for Creo what the transfer will be. To advance, I can go pick on a new reference over here, and I can go ahead and see, okay, well, what that surface is that one. I can select that, right? You can also, okay, that's the front over here. So I'll go ahead and pick that one. You can also, so this one is a coordinate system. And I will go and pick this guy, the align coordinate system. It's hidden, so it doesn't show up visibly here, but I can still go pick that from the model tree. Right? And this looks like it's the inner bore of that hole over here. You can also drag this drag handle over here to the new reference to select it that way as well. Right? Okay. Yes. Now you can keep doing that, to select all the additional references, right? Another thing you could also do, by the way, is you can also evaluate any pairings based on rules, right? So if I go into this evaluate over here, I can pick this, and Creo will check the old model, the new model, and see are there any rules it can use to match them together automatically, right? And if I expose this evaluation rules over here, it'll show you here, it's doing things like, okay, are there any component interfaces named the same between the old and the new one, right? Then it assumes, okay, well, those interfaces match, so maybe the same references will match, right? Does the geometry share history together, right? Was one model saved from the other one, so they share similar internal IDs in terms of feature history, right? And so these are the rules that, and you can check or uncheck whichever rule you want to disable, right? But if I go ahead and say, hey, evaluate, right? Creo will automatically check and evaluate the model and say, okay, oh, well, I was able to find a match for these other three references, right? I can verify and take a look and see that, okay, it's identifying the right, reference pairing, right? In this case, the back surface of this one over here as well, right? Once all those references are now selected, okay, there you go. And now Creo, again, swaps out the old tank, pops in the new one, and now everything is all fine and dandy. Right? Just a powerful way to, create, swap out one component for the other, and again, any design change that needs to happen, you can make that very seamlessly, right? While taking into account any pairings of references that need to be swapped from one model to the other. So last of all here, I'll dive into Mapkeys, right? And to do that, what I'll say is I'll again use the fuel tank. So again, with a bigger fuel tank, it's going to have a lot more gas. So maybe we need to upgrade the fasteners, the holding the fuel tank together to the rest of the assembly. And so I need to swap these out with a different fastener that's maybe with a higher grade material, which I already have on the model. It's called fastener 1. I already have that on my computer here. I just need to go up to I'll swap these out, right? So again, I can do this again with the map key. Now Mapkeys with Creo, I believe it's somewhere around Creo 11 is where which is what I'm using, by the way. In this case, I can show you that help about Creo. This is Creo 11. And so anything you see here applies to Creo 11 and also 12, actually. But I can go ahead and say under manage session. No. Options, sorry, is where I'm trying to get to. Historically, there used to be map key settings within this parametric options box. I think it was under the environment section over here. Right? But now they moved that away from this area over here, and now it has its own dedicated spot in file options over here, map key settings. Right? Additionally, what's also new is map keys now have their own separate map key file that you can save to, right? So historically, you used to save, when you save a map key, you would save to the config.pro and append to that. Now it saves off its separate map key file itself, right? So you can have, an admin map key, a set of map keys that are saved in a map key file, right? And you can also have user-defined map keys as well. Right? Now, key thing with map keys over here, you'll notice in this case, I already created this map key earlier. I'll delete that and I'll recreate that again because that's the one I'm going to use to show the replace. So to do that, you give it a hit new. You can give it a name or the key sequence you're going to specify to type in order to initiate the map key. Right? You can give it a name and also a description as well. And this is usually, recommended or helpful, so that way, to any other person that's using your computer or your settings, they know what's actually going on, right? Okay. This is key over here. You can record keyboard input, right? Now, before you hit record, right, whatever you have going on in the model at that exact moment, right, Creo it's going to record, right? So as an example, in this case, I already have this model selected. So when I hit record, whatever I do with this map key over here, with this map key over here, it's going to do that with the context of something already being selected. So if I hit record now and I right click, it knows it needs to right click, right? So then that means if I'm running the map key in the future and I don't have anything selected, the map key won't work. And so you always want to be aware of the context in which you're creating the model to make sure it's or creating the map key to make sure it's as robust as possible and it can work across multiple scenarios. Right? So an example in this case is I can deselect this model over here, right? Knowing that instead of going to right click to find the replace command, it's also under operations replace over here, right? So what I'll do now is I will go ahead and record that map key again, and I will say, let's hit record. And now let's go operations, replace. Don't go through the right click menu. And now from operations and replace, I can now pick, in this case, the model I want to replace, right? And in this case, it's going to assume I want to replace by family table because that's a family table instanced model, right? You'll notice, by the way, this is the only time where this remember these components checkbox is grayed out for you. You cannot uncheck because if you're replacing by family table member, it's the same generic across that, right? But in this case, I'm going to replace by an unrelated component. So I will clear this checkbox, select that unrelated component, which in this case is going to be this guy over here. From that, edit the reference pairing table. And in this case, I'll evaluate and I'll notice, okay, yes, all those surfaces evaluate successfully with the appropriate tags showing up across both of them. I'll say okay. And okay. And I'll stop recording my map key, right? Okay. Now I can close this box over here. Do I want to save the map keys? I'll say yes, let's do that. Let's save that. So now if I want to go ahead and initiate that map key to replace the other fastener over here, the fuel tank, I can go ahead and pick that, hit the QQ, right? And one thing that can also break map keys as well is, in this case, any dialog boxes that appear that were not in the original sequence, right? So again, you'll notice in this case, I already had a model selected, and so it's saying over here, hey, selected models are already selected, and do you still want to switch to unrelated, right? If I hit yes, now that map key essentially stopped, right? Because it couldn't account for that dialog box change, right? So in this case, typically I would want to use the map key the same way it was recorded, right? So I did not have anything selected, right? QQ. That's odd. It's still pulling out the same dialog box over here. So sure, I'll hit yes, and then I can just pop into the reference pairing go. Oh, it already picked the new model for me already, right? Should be able to hit OK. Yep, the reference pairing table is already applied, and now it's swapped in over here. No, it did not do that. Okay, so yeah, so then this is the case. I would have to then, let's see here. Maybe better to I found better luck updating that map key. The options. Okay, settings. Now let me edit this. You can always edit map keys, by the way, right? And re-record them. Now in this case, I will have that selected. Record. Now let me try it, from accessing it from the right-click menu. We're here. Swap. Remove the checkbox. Pick fastener 1. Open reference pairing table. Evaluate. Okay. Okay. Stop. Okay. Now, if I go ahead and pick a different fastener, just as an example over here, I can now say, let's run that, right? Now it runs, yeah, there we go. It runs through the full sequence, right? It knows what to pick, and it replaced that fastener with this fastener over here, as an example, right? So that is, kind of the everything there about, Mapkeys, how you can use those to automate, many tasks, right, that you have, and also, using design exploration extension to, test out design variants and also the update functionality as well, right? So at this point, I'll pause here and we'll open it up to any questions and answers that come in. Or if you have any questions right now, you can type it into the questions panel and we'll go ahead and answer those right now.
Yeah, so I'm going to share my screen and then we can share your screen back once we see if there's any questions that come in. Please use that question mark icon. And while we wait for any questions to be typed out, we'll actually go through just some of our upcoming events if you're interested. We do have webinars that will be focused on PTC's Windchill. Those include Microsoft desktop integration, also ETRAGE's remote support of Windchill, and best practices for Windchill systems administrators. Additionally, at the end of April, if any of you are attending PTC's Global Summit for Users in Las Vegas, ETRAGE will be there at booth 52. And if you come visit us, Shei will be there and you can ask him any questions you have in person and pick his brain. At this time, I'm not seeing any questions. We can give it one more moment.
While we're waiting on questions, I'll share something else really quickly here. Let me, I can share my screen and okay. The one thing that I'll point out again to everyone here, back to design exploration. If you are ever in that, and you have this session over here, you'll notice over here, typically if I'm exiting out of it, you notice it asks you the option to save the design exploration session, right? Creo will, if you do that, Creo will save that as a TMU file, and as it shows over here, and that file usually will have links to the original model files that were used within that session, right? So essentially, it'll store an address of where that file lives on your computer or in Windchill if you're connected to a PLM system. What that means then is if you save that TMU file, right, but then you go ahead and open the main CAD file, the PRT or assembly file that you initially started from, you will not see any design exploration checkpoints in there. Right? To go back and access the checkpoints, again, across multiple sessions, you need to go back and open the TMU file. And the TMU file tells Creo where the original files were. Creo opens all of that up, adds the checkpoints to that, and you can continue from where you left off, right? So if you have a design review or you're preparing this across multiple days or multiple sessions, you can always save your design exploration session to a TMU file and then reuse that in future sessions. The option above it over here called store models will, instead of having links to the model files, store models will save those models into the TMU file, right? So that way you can take that as it becomes its own standalone file at that point, and you can then open that, and the models will reference the files in the TMU file, right? So that's just the key difference, between those over there.
Shei, we do have a question about Mapkeys. It says, That simplified example replaced a single screw. It would need to replace the threaded hole too. Is it possible to create a map key that would update both parts at the same time?
So create a map key that would replace multiple parts at the same time.
Yeah, so the screw and the thread.
Yeah. So, well, I guess the thread is part of the entire the gas tank is assembled into the block over here. So unless maybe that's a
We
threaded
lost your
insert.
we lost your screen.
Oh, I see.
Shay,
Oh,
can you reshare?
let me share real quick. So I was saying the tank is assembled over here to this block over here, right? So unless the threads, if you mean, say for example, if that was a threaded insert example, right, then yes, that's a separate component that you can replace, because replace only works on components, not features, right? So I can't replace, the vanes on this recoil cover, right? The entire recoil cover has to be replaced, right? So now if your question is, can the map key work and replace multiple different components, not just a one for one, right? So if there are components A and B that were being swapped out for components C and D, right? Then yes, you can record a map key that can pick all those components, right, and replace them. It's not just always a one for one, right? And even better yet, what you can do that would even be better is, and I may not show that for sake of time, when you're recording a map key, there is the option to, say a new one as an example here. If I hit record, I can start, clicking and recording things, right? There is the option over here to pause, right? And when you pause the map key recording, you can type a prompt in here, right? So in the spot where there should be a user input for something, right? You can type that prompt within here, right? And then resume recording the map key, right? So that way, in this example here, I selected, bolt 415, I think it was bolt 4-15, and replaced that with fastener 1, right? And so every time I rerun that map key, Creo is looking for bolt 415 and fastener 1, right? In this, if you pause the map key recording right before the model is being selected, and you prompt it with, say, for example, select the outgoing model as an example here of a prompt, and then prompt it again to select the incoming model, then in that case, that single map key replacing one for one can work across hundreds of different files, models you have that are coming in or out, right? Because in that point, when you play the map key, it'll run up until it needs user input. It'll stop and show the prompt to say, hey, select incoming model, right? And then the user just goes, picks the incoming model, hits OK, and then the map key continues to play, right? And so that essentially makes your map key then, bulletproof across. It's not just select, removing one model for another one. It's removing any model at all whatsoever, by using the pause feature and any resume prompts to specify what the user should do, going forward to resume creating the map key.
All right. I'm going to close this out today. We want to thank everyone for attending. As we wrap up today's webinar, we do invite you to learn more about ETRAGE software and service solutions. You could do this through past webinars that are found on our website and our YouTube channel. We also invite you to reach out. We're happy to have a deeper dive into today's topic or any challenges that you may be having around your systems management, your current processes, or the software end users. I will share our contact information so you can reach out if needed. Feel free to call us or to email. We do pick up the phone. We love talking to people. And a reminder that we will send out a link to today's recording so that you can rewatch or share with your colleagues. ETRAGE thanks all of you for spending time with us today, and we will see you next time. Take care.